Okay.
It's going, Clint. Yes.
Hi, Joe.
Hey, so I see Ann's home.
She is home.
Okay,
Good.
when she get home? I haven't heard from my son yet.
No, me neither.
Yeah. So I guess he's getting out around
8.
8 o'clock. So how's Ann? All is good, I
She's
guess.
good. She's off camera because she didn't shower yet.
Me neither. Look at me. I'm a mess.
She's a beautiful woman. She doesn't need
She's a
to
very
shower.
beautiful woman.
Yes, she is. And you're a beautiful man.
You are too.
Well, it's really.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Lumbach, DISCA's Executive Director, and I'd like to welcome you to our virtual wine tasting and 2020 Excellence in Construction Awards video premiere. I'd like to mention that none of the award recipients have had an opportunity to view their completed videos yet, so this is truly a premiere showing. 2020 was a very difficult year for so many reasons. DISCA, like many organizations, canceled most of the in-person events. But the decision to cancel the Excellence in Construction Awards Gala was especially difficult because this is our opportunity to recognize the extraordinary work and fine craftsmanship that our members deliver every day. And it's so often taken for granted by the public. It's also an opportunity for us to share the joys of the holiday season with our DISCA friends, co-workers, business associates. So we thought, what better way for us to start a new year, recognize the award recipients, and spend some time together virtually than over a glass of wine. But before I introduce our guest host for the evening, I'd like to remind everyone to open the bottles of wine to give them an opportunity to breathe. Also have a few empty wine glasses nearby for the tasting. You also should have received an email with a description of these wines, along with several recipes that will pair well with these wines, and also a list of the award videos that we'll be viewing as we progress through the tasting this evening. Now, if you weren't up for the challenge of creating some of these dishes, the sampler of cheeses you received will pair very nicely with all of these wines. Now, I'd like to introduce our host, who is one of Sonoma Valley's most recognized wine celebrities. He has his own radio show, he has his own wine classes, a vineyard, and wine brand. I guess he's the definition of the wine guy. So please join me in welcoming Tom Semino.
Well, welcome to you guys as well from the West Coast here. We're sitting in the heart of Alexander Valley, and I'm going to be your host, as Bill was just saying. And this will be our virtual wine tasting for you. We've got 6 beautiful wines that we're going to be tasting. And as we get into these, I just want a little bit of housekeeping that I wanted to talk to you about. We're taping this, so if you don't want to show up on the video, please go ahead and turn off your camera. And as far as questions, if you have any questions, you want to look for the chat box and type those in as we go. So if we're talking about a particular wine and you've got a question, go ahead and type that in, and David will ask me that question as we're proceeding through that wine. And don't forget, at the end of the tasting, we're also going to have a question and answer period. So if you come up with a question that you want to ask me later, go ahead and jot that down, and we can take care of that. And also some questions have come up about, well, these are 6 full bottles of wine, and some people were concerned about how do they store the wines once they're opened, and worrying about the wine going bad. My recommendation to you would be, after you open the wine and pour yourself whatever you're going to have for the particular tasting of that wine, go ahead and ram that cork back in, and at the end of the tasting, go ahead and put them in the refrigerator those wines will be good for at least a week. And some of the red wines would actually even get better, especially the Cabernet, the last Cabernet. It's a 16, so it's a little bit on the young side. So that's it for our housekeeping, and we want to get right to our first wine, which is the Sonoma Coast Vineyards 2019 Sauvignon Blanc. And one thing that you might want to do is, if you printed out these sheets, take the back of one of the sheets and take a look at the wine. A lot of times people forget to take a look at their wine, and they might just pour themselves a glass and then go right to taking a sip. A million times I've been to parties and people just walk up to the wine bar and just pour themselves a glass and don't really even know what the wine looks like or smells like, and they're sipping it and not giving it a lot of thought. Winemakers take a lot of time making sure that the wine is the perfect color, and they keep air away from it so that it doesn't oxidize. So give your eyes a little bit of love. A lot of people say that the nose is 75% of the taste, and I agree with that, but your eyes need a little love as well. So let's lay that down and take a look. And this is a 2019, so it's a very young wine. Sauvignon Blancs usually are enjoyed in their youth, so a 19 is the current release. And if you look at it, it's got a shimmering kind of golden color. It's a beautiful wine, and you might want to just give it a little swirl. And I call this my super nose. As you're swirling, you put your hand above the glass and swirl it, and then bring it up to your nose, and then give it a nice sip, nice sniff, because the aromatics in the glass are driven up to your nose when you really kind of jostle the wine around in your glass and then bring it up. And you can really smell the aromatics, that white peach. It's got a little tangerine there, a little citrus, which are classic aromas that come from Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc is also known as Fumé Blanc, so you might get confused sometimes if you're at a wine shop and you're trying to find a Sauvignon Blanc and all you see are Fumé Blancs. It was Robert Mondavi that coined the term Fumé Blanc. He named his Sauvignon Blanc that as a marketing tool, and it was very successful and it stuck. So today's wines are called Sauvignon Blanc and Fumé Blanc, and they're the exact same variety. The variety is Sauvignon Blanc. So we're getting some of that nose. You're getting that tangerine, little white peach. This wine has seen some neutral French oak, so it has a creaminess. So as we're about to take a sip, think about the texture of the wine as it goes into your mouth. So I'm going to get my spit cup here. Let's take a sip. Don't forget to swirl it around your mouth. You want to get all of the flavor and the texture into your mouth, and feel the acidity, kind of almost like dripping around the edge of your palate and down your cheeks and the inside. Sauvignon Blanc is bracing and it has good acidity, especially in its youth. This is the 19 again. I'm getting some of that white peach in the mouth, a little bit of apple. You might want to, like, as you're sitting around your table, kind of throw some adjectives around to the people that you're enjoying this wine with. And do you feel how mouth-watering that is? That's from the acidity. And this wine will go very well with any sort of whitefish, halibut. It's probably known for its affinity to go with oysters. A lot of folks really love Sauvignon Blanc and oysters. And with our pairing, we paired this one with the goat cheese and zucchini roll-ups. And with the goat cheese, that tartness in the goat cheese goes very well with the tartness in the Sauvignon Blanc itself. And if you take another sip, the finish of the wine, which is the aftertaste, kind of continues. And this wine is really beautiful. The acidity is just wonderful, and it's asking for a bite of cheese or a little bit of that zucchini roll-up. The flavor, there's that little bit of nuttiness that you get in that finish. That's from the oak aging. Sometimes Sauvignon Blancs are all stainless steel aged. Sometimes they're barrel fermented a little bit to part of the blend, just to give it that creaminess that you're getting in this, so it gives a little more complexity. Do we like? We're thinking this is quite nice. I think it's one of the best Sauvignon Blancs on the market today. So that's that is the Sonoma Coast 2019 Sonoma County Sauvignon Blanc. And now that you've tasted the Sauvignon Blanc, let's watch the first video of the 2020 project winners.
This year's winner for the retail project category is Anderson Interior Contracting for the work they performed at Bloomingdale's in Norwalk, Connecticut. The store occupies 150,000 square feet spread out over 3 floors, and Anderson's craftsmanship is evident throughout nearly all of it. Challenges included massive amounts of precision work to meet exacting standards, along with a rather aggressive timeline.
Loading was a challenge. Working with other subs was a challenge because we couldn't finish in the time allotted if we didn't work with them. So the logistics of the project was a little difficult, but our suppliers overcame that, and it worked. There were no comebacks as far as punch lists. Nothing was omitted. When we were done, we were done. And we hope to do it again soon.
So the key thing with Bloomingdale's is where the ceiling systems are, how they lay out, how they line up to the vendors, to the aisles, the columns, the tile on the floor, the tiles on the ceiling, the lights, everything is critical to them on how they sell their product. So the layout and design of the place required almost a daily collaboration between us and the general contractor and Bloomingdale's to make sure every single thing was going to line up, so you're just so focused on every finite detail. One lazy day can create months of work, and we weren't called back for, any type of errors. Everything just worked out perfectly. They walked the job and they were more than happy.
What more can you ask for from a project? Excellent work, Anderson.
Welcome back here to Alexander Valley. We're going to move on to our next wine. And I want to make sure and let everyone know the price of these wines. I omitted that in the Sauvignon Blanc. The price of the Sauvignon Blanc is $25, just if you want to keep that in mind. Because at the end of the tasting, we're going to let you guys know that if you wanted to buy any of these wines with a mixed case or whatever, we take that list price and knock off an extra 15%. And we'll talk about that a little later. So the next wine is the Seminole Vineyards 2015 Alexander Valley Brenda Lee Chardonnay. This is named after my beautiful wife, Brenda Lee. It's grown right here at the ranch, about a 3-minute walk right outside the side door here. And again, remember we were talking about you want to look at the wines. The first wine was a 19, and how that clear color, it kind of a little light, bright gold color. Take a look, this wine is now a 15 vintage. So it's going on 6 years old, and it's barrel fermented, 100% French oak aged. And if you take a look at the color, you know that this wine is had some oak, because Chardonnay is a clear white wine that gets its color from the toast in the barrels. And all of these French oak barrels have a medium toast to them, and that gives the wine a little bit of color, as well as time in the bottle. It's getting a little bit of oxidation. So let's go ahead and give it that super nose. Put your hand over it, give it a heavy swirl, then bring it right up to your nose. Boy, I'll tell you, there's a little bit of a yeastiness, a little bit of an oak character to it, a little custard, a little golden delicious apple. There's all kinds of complexities going on. Brenda loves her wines that have a little bit of age to them, so that they have time in the bottle gives wines these secondary flavors and notes of complexity that really add to a wine. And as the wine gets older, it develops that kind of what's known as bottle bouquet. And this wine certainly has all of that. Are we getting some of these notes in the nose? There's a little citrus there as well. And a little hint of oak around the back of your nose. Let's go ahead and take a sip. Again, don't forget, swirl it around your mouth here. You know, you really want to talk and think about these wines, and you want to get it every little drop all around your palate. My mouth is watering. I mean, the acidity, again, it's a 15, and the acidity is still right there. This one, we're pairing it with Brenda's Gougères, which are these beautiful little puffs, and they've got cheese in them, and they go very well with this Brenda Lee Chardonnay. This one would also go well with salmon. This one could stand up to even beef. It's a full flavored Chardonnay. It's 100% barrel fermented. I use 2 different kinds of oak. Most of the time Chardonnay, which I call kind of the tofu of grape varieties, because it takes on the flavor of whatever you do to the wine. God, I don't know if you can hear that, but we've got a major rain shower going on here at the ranch. Anyway, so the French oak that we use, I use Damy and Syrah, and that's the name of the producer of the French oak, right? The Cooper in France that we barrel ferment the wine in and age it. All of our Chardonnays go about 11, 12 months in oak, so we get that little bit of character. If you go back to the wine and give it a swirl again, you're not, the oak isn't over dominant. Sometimes, California style Chardonnays, people will say, I don't like Chardonnay because it's an unbelievable oak bomb. Well, I'm a grape grower, and we spend a lot of time in our vineyard making sure that those grapes are pristine, good shape, lots of flavor, just the right amount of sugar, good acidity. We bring them into the winery, and then if you put them in oak, there's too much oak. Some wineries will go, 75% brand new oak. We do about 25 to 30%. And this wine also only goes through 30% malolactic, sometimes 25%, depending on how many barrels I'm making. And a malolactic fermentation, if you're not familiar, I'll give you a quick synopsis. Fermentation, there's a yeast fermentation and a bacterial fermentation. In the primary fermentation, the yeast fermentation, yeast eats the sugar in the grapes, and the byproduct is alcohol, heat, and CO2 gas. Once all of the sugar is eaten by the yeast, you've got a dry wine, and then you inoculate that wine with malolactic starter. And mallow acid is the apple acid, the tart acid, and you turn it into lactic acid. The bacteria acts in the wine, and it turns the mallow acid into lactic acid. Lactic acid is the milk acid. So the higher the amount of malolactic fermentation in the wine, the creamier and buttery the wine might be. So this wine is only 30% malolactic. So therefore, you get a much more tart, more food-friendly wine. So when you're looking or talking to your wine shop clerk, and if you're liking this style of Chardonnay with more acidity and less fat, creaminess, cloying character, more food-friendly, then you want to look for lower malolactic, as opposed to if you want one of those bigger, heavier, more sipping style of Chardonnays, then you want to look for the higher amount of malolactic. And also, this is Alexander Valley grown, which is a warm region. So we don't have any problem with it being too high in acidity. Whereas if you're in a real cool region like Sonoma Coast or maybe Russian River, where you get a lot of those high tones, a lot of acid, you might want to run your wine through a little bit more malolactic to soften the wine. So malolactic fermentation is is a good thing to know about. And this one, we're very happy with it. Brenda's quite a cook, and so we're always having food with our wines, and she likes the wines that have lower malolactic. At this time too, I'd like to mention, what did I do with that cork? Could you toss me one of those corks? If you notice on all of the wines that we're serving today, we have this is called a DM cork, and what it is it's natural cork that's been ground, and a proprietary technique of blasting the ground cork with CO2 gas, and therefore it eliminates any possibility of cork taint, TCA, which I always want to make sure I pronounce this correctly, trichloroanisole, TCA, or spoilage, cork taint spoilage. A number of years ago, up to maybe 7-8% of all corks had this cork TCA problem. Well, now with these DMs, you're never going to get a cork bottle of wine from any of the wines that come out of vintage wine estates where all these wines came. I've been using these DMs since 2007, and you'll never get a corked wine from that. So, do we have any questions? Anybody have any questions? Maybe not understanding malolactic, or had a question about some of these corks? Guess not. I'll leave you this wine then with the price. The Brenda Lee 15 Chardonnay is $30 per bottle. And now that you've tasted the Brenda Lee Chardonnay, we have 2 videos coming up, as one organization has won 2 of the 2020 projects.
This year's recipient of the Residential Project Award is TAS Construction for the work they did on the Solana at Waldwick, now known as Atria Waldwick in Waldwick, New Jersey. Construction of the 2-story, 90,000 square feet, 80-unit senior housing facility began in July of 2018 and was completed in November of 2019. TAS was involved with the project from foundations all the way through to its completion. To start, they were responsible for building the superstructure using cold-formed metal framing with minimal structural steel. This was not without its challenges.
While we were installing this, it was in the middle of the winter. And, most of the time it was icy up there, and it was very dangerous pretty much. But, so we always practice safety first. Everyone wear harnesses, the proper footwear, clothing with the must, of course. And, it's kind of tricky, but we got it done.
Another complicating factor were the very attractive yet complex roofs. Setting the 720 roof trusses and making sure all the gables and valleys came together perfectly was no easy feat, especially in less than ideal winter conditions. The end result, however, was well worth the effort, as the variably pitched roofs add a classic and elegant look to the structure. When viewed as a whole, Atria Waldwick looks cozy and inviting, just perfect for senior living. Residents and guests pass under an attractive tongue-and-groove, wood-lined overhang constructed by TAS as they enter the building's main lobby. Here, too, TAS craftsmanship is on full display. They were responsible for the installation of the 3-foot by 3-foot MDF ceiling coffers, as well as the surrounding framed soffits. The decorative panels separating the lobby areas were also installed by TAS. Throughout the building, TAS completed all the drywall and ceiling work, including moldings and soffits. They even did the framing of the large staircase toward the back of the building. Each of the building's 80 resident apartments feature acoustical ceilings and drywall work executed to perfection by TAS.
Kind of special for me today because it was like, wow, this is actually how it looks at the finished product. So now looking at it, I'm like, not bad at all. So it's kind of very interesting to see the final touches, what they did here, because it's very beautiful inside here.
This year, DISCA's primary education project winner is TAS Construction for their involvement in the build of the new Trenton Central High School in Trenton. The building is, and the project was, nothing shy of massive, and TAS was in charge of all the exterior framing and interior work. This included the building's unique main entrance, as well as its distinctive and complex roofline.
If you notice, basically the parapet is like almost like sawtooth. It's made out of 12 gauge 12-inch studs, which is especially difficult to install. It's also much harder to cut, and everything was cut to the size up on the roof by my guys. The finished job looks very nice. It's something that stands out as soon as you pass the building or as soon as you start driving by. It's something different for sure.
Just inside the main entryway is a glass-walled 50-foot-high atrium where all the framing, drywall, and soffit work was done by TAS. This space includes a number of artifacts retrieved from the school's predecessor, including a magnificent chandelier that hangs from the atrium's ceiling, several stonework features taken from old doorways, as well as some spectacular and immaculately preserved mosaics. A perfect nod to the past for a school with all eyes focused on the future. Beyond the atrium, seemingly endless hallways are adorned with soffits and ceilings by TAS, who were also responsible for erecting the framework beneath the main stairway displaying a trophy case. Everywhere you look, their fine craftsmanship is visible, from the oversized cafeteria to classrooms, lecture halls, well-equipped computer labs, and lounge areas. Arguably, however, the school's crown jewel and possibly TAS's finest work is the spectacular, state-of-the-art 1,000-seat theater. Here, TAS installed the curved 4-foot by 8-foot wood-finished ceiling sound panels, each weighing 90 pounds. The panels not only improve the room's acoustics, but also look phenomenal. Wood panel accents on the auditorium walls mimic the building's unique roof lines. And as a grand finale, TAS did all the heavy-gauge framing that supports the true heart of the theater, its stage. Everyone from TAS involved in the project should stand up and take a bow.
I see just beautiful school. That's, you have high finishes, which I actually think it will be something special for the kids, and I just hope it will help this neighborhood to actually become something even better than it is now.
I'm going to have to give a shout out to all you guys back east, because we haven't had a rainstorm like this. We've been waiting for it for about 3 or 4 weeks. So I want to thank you. You're our lucky charm back there. So I don't know if you can hear it, but we've got amazing amount of rain coming in. It's perfect. So our next wine here as we proceed, it's Sonoma Coast Vineyards. So it's the same brand as the Sauvignon Blanc, 2018 Pinot Noir, Freestone Hills, Sonoma Coast. And it's a beautiful Pinot Noir. So we're moving now from the white wines to the red. And if you're ever hosting a wine tasting, you always want to go from a lighter style to the heavier style. So we went from Sauvignon Blanc to Chardonnay, Chardonnay being a more full-bodied white. And then when we move into the reds, you want to have the lighter style reds first, and then you move into the heavier wines as you proceed. So this is the lighter style of red wine, Pinot Noir. And Pinot Noir is a very finicky grape. And a lot of times people wonder why Pinot Noirs cost so much. It's because you don't blend it with anything else. They're all 100% Pinot Noir, and it doesn't grow well if you leave a big crop on the vine. So it needs to have a light crop. It grows in very special cool region areas, and it's susceptible to mildew and rain at harvest time, sunburn. Growers call it the headache grape. And so Pinot Noir, that's why part of the reason Pinot Noir costs as much as it does is because it's just hard to grow. And this particular Pinot, this 18 Freestone Hills, list price on this one is $40. So let's take a look at that. Look at that beautiful color. That's kind of a ruby red in color. If you run your hand underneath it, you can see your fingers. So, you know, a lot of times people will ask me, well, how do you know what a wine is? When people ask you, could you guess what wine this is? And a lot of sommeliers will, first thing they do when somebody asks them that question is they try to figure out what it isn't before they guess what it is. And if you run your hand behind a red wine and you can still see your fingers, you know it's not going to be a big Zinfandel or a Cabernet or a Syrah. The tip is it's probably going to be a Pinot or a Grenache or something like that. So you can see your hand behind it. Beautiful color. This is a 2018. So again, it's very youthful. So let's go ahead and give it that super nose that we talked about. Bring the aromatics to us. Dark cherry. There's just a whisper of oak there. Again, as a grower, I don't want to smell oak first thing. You've probably stuck your nose in a glass of wine before, and the first thing you smell is this charred oak character. It's not what I'm looking for when I make a wine. And this wine is, our master Pinot Noir maker is Anthony Austin, and he makes some absolutely fabulous Pinots. Really, that cherry is dominant. Let's go ahead and give that one more nose here. What are they saying? Good acidity, a little bit of pomegranate. I'm not a big pomegranate guy, but I guess that could be that. I'm almost getting a little cranberry, maybe. You know, the more complex a wine is, the more different flavors and aromas you can get from the wine. And, you know, a lot of times people just take a sip and not even notice the nose. You gotta, you know, really, if you're gonna pay $40 for a bottle of wine, you ought to really enjoy it. And the winemakers go to great pains to make sure that they've got all the complexities that they can so that the wine really packs a wallop. So let's go ahead and take a taste. Again, don't forget, swirl that around. I know it doesn't look very sexy when you're kind of swishing around in your mouth, but it's the best way. Boy, there's caramel. I'm getting a little bit of that, there's a little bit of dusty tannin. Now, this is the first time that we've talked about tannin. Sometimes white wines can have tannin, but most of the time they do not. You get your tannin from your red wine. Tannin comes from the skins of the grapes. And this one has almost a little, you know, there's like a little furry character that you're getting on your palate. Do you remember when you were a kid, quick cocoa? You know, that little kind of blast of dusty cocoa? There's a little bit of that in what you get in tannin. I'm sure you're getting that fairiness. I'm gonna give that another taste. You know, this wine is a blend from several different vineyards up in the Freestone Hills. And a lot of times, wow, the acidity is so wonderful there. It's begging for a bite of food. What did we pair this with? Oh, the BOCs, the basil, onion, and cheese toasty on Brenda's olive bread goes so well with this. I don't know how many of you are out there. Maybe raise your hand. How many of you made some of the food pairings that go with this? Maybe David, you take a peek. Are some of you raising your hands?
Yeah.
Any of you make the BOC? The basil too just adds that little extra kind of kick to that cheese sandwich. This Pinot, really, really something. So as I was saying, when you get a young Pinot and you get a single vineyard young Pinot, sometimes they're hard as nails when they're young because the pedigree of the vineyard is such that it needs time in the bottle. So a lot of times when you're buying Pinot Noir and it's young, like this 18, you want to buy the one that's the blend. You're paying a little less for the wine and you're getting a blend that's more approachable in its youth. So this wine is an 18. I've got some wines, some Sonoma Coast that are 2011, 2010s that are unbelievably beautiful now because they've got that extra bottle age and those nuances that you get from bottle bouquet. But this one is starting to show very, very nicely, even though it's a 2018, and partly because it's a blend from many, many different vineyards. So the winemaker, just like a winemaker would, or a cook would use spice, a winemaker could use something from one vineyard that has more tannin and more cherry in another, and more of the cranberry in another, and then blend those all together and get a really super blend in the end. Because this wine, I'm hoping you guys think the same thing that I do. God, this is nice. It's all cherry. I guess you could say pomegranate. I'm kind of thinking of pomegranate, cranberry, that dusty tannin that's in there, that little bit of soft tannin. That is beautiful. Now, if I could have a bite of that sandwich, I'd really be in good shape. Anybody have a question?
No question. It's good.
Very good. Tastes a little raspberry in here.
Yeah, there's some raspberry there too. Good call. You know, and if you go back in again and kind of give it a swirl, and then put it back in your mouth.
In your mouth, not
Yeah,
swallow.
you definitely can get the raspberry there, like almost right off the vine raspberry. Beautiful.
We did have a question come in.
Good question.
What makes a difference in the year, the vintage of the wine?
Well, Mother Nature would have everything to do with that. I was just in a tasting where a winemaker was talking about he had done a 10-year study on temperature and also rainfall. And he found that for the last decade, the mean temperature hadn't changed that much in Sonoma County. But what changed was the amount of rainfall that we had in various years, because we've gone through a drought here in California, and rainfall amount affected the flavor in the wine much more than temperature. And so a vintage might be, you might have frost in the spring when the vines are just in bloom. And if that's happening, you get a smaller crop. So therefore you don't get as much fruit on the vine, or you get what's called shot berries, where each grapevines, they self-pollinate. And if you get shot berries, each berry didn't pollinate, and you might end up, instead of a nice tight cluster, you might end up with a loose cluster, and therefore you don't get as much flavor out of that cluster that you would had they not had frost or rain during bloom. Also heat waves during the summertime. This past year, one time in late August, we had a heat wave where it was 116 here at the ranch. We've been growing grapes since 1988, and we've never seen 116 here at the ranch. So it was a very, very challenging year, 2020. Not saying you can't make great wine, but you're not going to have as much of the real super wines from 2020 because the vintage was more difficult. 2018 was a good year, a very good year. And so as you're looking through wines that you might want to age, 2018 would be a year that you could age the wines. I hope that answered the question for you. Any other questions? Again, that's a $40 bottle of Pinot, and I'll tell you, that's a hell of a price for that particular Pinot Noir. I've tasted a lot of $60 and $80 bottles that don't taste as good as that. And remember, we'll give you 15 off if you guys decide you need some later. So now that we've tasted the Pinot Noir, let's watch the next video of the 2020 project winners.
The Camden Tower, also known as Triad 1828 Center, located a bit south of the Ben Franklin Bridge on the banks of the Delaware River, is a spectacular facility by just about any metric. With the river in the foreground and the Philadelphia skyline in the background, the views are absolutely amazing. LSN Contractors did much of the ceiling work throughout the building, which has earned them this year's Acoustical Ceiling Project Award.
We installed on 16 of the 19 floors here at the tower. We installed all of the acoustical ceiling tiles. We had 3 or 4 different types of tiles that we installed throughout the building, and all of them are luxury type tiles, higher end tiles, but some are the smaller standardized size, but all high end ceiling tiles.
Large open areas with high ceilings are spread throughout the building, requiring tens of thousands of square feet of installation, nearly all of it necessitating the use of scissor lifts. The views from these areas are so incredible, it's difficult to imagine how LSN tradesmen got anything done, but there's clear evidence they did. 4x4 Armstrong Optimus ceiling tiles, each weighing 5 pounds, were hung from a precisely installed Armstrong Superfine XL ceiling grid. To LSN's credit, the fit and finish of these massive ceilings is beyond compare.
So one of the biggest challenges was having so many people working in such a confined space. So as you can imagine, several hundred people working in one confined box, everybody trying to work on the same areas and trying to access the same things and materials, tools, equipment, all that type of stuff. Everything, it was a challenge to coordinate, but my guys did an excellent job, and it was just top-notch coordination to get it done.
The sheer quantity of the ceiling work that LSN performed over the building's entirety is extremely impressive, and the amount of material that needed to be brought in, staged, laid out, then installed is mind-boggling. Whether in common areas, oversized conference rooms, or in the building's state-of-the-art fitness center, the ceiling work is exacting, clean, and expansive. The myriad of corridors crisscrossing the building were also topped with LSN's high-quality work. In addition, they installed the ceilings in all 7 of the building's parking levels. So, in the end, LSN was responsible for installing acoustical ceiling tile on 16 of the tower's 19 floors, each measuring 25,000 square feet in size. Doing the math reveals a quantity of work that may be even more impressive than the building's spectacular views. Hats off to everyone at LSN for keeping their heads down and not getting sidetracked by those views.
Wow, I thought grape growing and winemaking was difficult, but after looking at that video, holy smoke, congratulations to you guys. All right, so we're moving on to our next wine. It's the Gerard Napa Valley 2017 Old Vine Zinfandel. And again, as I was telling you, we started from the lighter whites, the heavier white, and then we went to Pinot. Now we're getting into a bigger red Zinfandel, which a lot of people deem as America's grape. The Zinfandel, kind of adopted as America's grape. And take a look at that. Remember I was telling you that people want, they ask you what the grape variety might be. Well, under a Pinot Noir, you could see your hand. If you run your hand behind this Zinfandel, it's really difficult to see your fingers. So you know that this is a full-bodied, bigger style wine. And we're gonna give that a nose here. Let's give it that super nose again. Wow, there's some raspberry and some cherry again, some baking spice, some brown spice. Zinfandel, unlike Cabernet Sauvignon, can handle American oak, and this wine was aged in American oak. For some reason, the fullness and the texture of the Zinfandel variety and the higher alcohol can handle a more aggressive oak. I've made wines since 1983, and over the years, whenever I made a Zinfandel, I found that I could give it an aggressive American oak barrel. When you're a winemaker and you're a winery and you're paying for your barrels, French oak barrels cost anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500 a barrel, where American oak barrels will cost somewhere around $800 to $900 a barrel. So if you could make Cabernet Sauvignon as good with American oak as you can with French oak, then more people would be using that American oak in their Cabernets. But It works with Zinfandel, it doesn't work with Cabernet. And this one, they actually, as I look at the notes, they're using Hungarian oak as well. So extra complexity coming out of this. Glenn Hugo is the winemaker for Gerard, and they just opened a brand new facility up in Calistoga. So if you guys are coming back to California after this crazy time that we're in the midst of, that would be a beautiful stop right in the northern Napa Valley. So let's give it a go ahead and give it a taste. Feel the acidity there. And remember we were talking about tannin in the Pinot, where it was a little bit of that Nestle's Quick. This one, is this tannic or what? I mean, that's got dryness on you. It's full flavored. It's got that big character, big raspberry, big blackberry. The term old vine describes the age of the Zinfandel grapevine itself, but the term old vine is not regulated by the TTB, like estate, bottled wood, or a lot of the different things that vintage, that type of thing. Old vine is kind of a gentleman's agreement, ladies and gentlemen agreement, I guess you could say, between winemakers. Old vines are usually at least 50 years old, some 30 to 50. But as a wine vine gets older, it produces less fruit, but more concentrated fruit. So if you see old vine on the label, the chances are it's going to be a bigger wine than if it doesn't say old vine on it. The tannins on this are, I'm really feeling the tannins. What did we pair this with? Let's check. Oh, the lentil hand pies. If any of you made those, that really spiciness in those lentil hand pies goes so well with big zins like this. The spicy, they match, and it kind of tames that tannin. And then the crust of the hand pie kind of takes care of the oak, so those match as well. So it's a real nice, it's almost like a match made in heaven. Brenda makes those lentil hand pies fabulously well. We do a lot of that with our bigger reds. Juicy comes to mind. Almost like, I mean, when's the last time you were in a blackberry field with all these fresh blackberries and you're pulling them straight off the vine and just throwing them right in your mouth? This is that fresh blackberry character, and that tannin, again, that my mouth is just is begging for a bite of food. Zinfandel goes great with pizza. It's almost a perfect kind of fun red wine to have. Brenda makes pesto, a beautiful pesto in the summertime when the basil's coming in, and the tomatoes. And I refuse to have pesto when tomatoes aren't coming in with the basil. And then I always have, and this zin is one of my favorites, I always have a big zin with that pesto and tomato. That's another match made in heaven. This one, I'm getting some caramel too in there. Are you getting some of that? Anybody have any questions about about oak or about Zinfandel in general? Do we have one, David?
Yeah. Someone said, I thought Zinfandel was white. Why is this red?
Excuse me. White Zinfandel is made from the red Zinfandel grape. And what you do to make a white Zin is, well, let's start right with the grapes. If you take a Zinfandel grape and you squeeze it, all the juice that runs from that grape is white. 99% of red grapes, when you squeeze them, the juice runs white. The color comes from the skins of the grape itself. So with red wine, you crush the grapes and you put them in a container, a fermentation container, and you leave the skins in contact with the juice, and you keep turning that juice together into that. It's called maceration, where you keep the skins in contact with the seeds and the juice. And as fermentation continues, the color of the grape juice turns red from the skins. With white zin, what they do is when they crush those red grapes, they leave it in contact with the skins for 24 hours, 36 hours, depending on how dark you want your white zin to be. So your white Zinfandel is made from the red Zinfandel grape. It's just when it was fermented, it was in contact with the skins for a short amount of time. Fermentation usually takes about a week, 10 days, depending on the amount of heat. Remember when we were talking about yeast fermentation? Yeast eats the sugar, the byproducts are heat, CO2 gas, and alcohol. Well, that heat also exaggerates the extraction of the color from the skins. And depending on how long and how cool that fermentation is, you could extend that fermentation even longer, extracting more tannin and more color from those skins. So that's why there's white zin and red zin. And you also see that in your Sangiovese rosés or your Syrah rosés, because rosés are pretty much made in the same way with just a small amount of time on the skins. Does that answer that question? So these lentil hand pies would go great with that, and I could use a bite of one of those right now. So now that you've tasted the Zinfandel, and by the way, that Zinfandel is $28 a bottle, which is a really good price for an old vine Zin, by the way. Now that you've tasted the Zinfandel, we have 2 videos coming up, as one organization has won 2 of the 2020 projects.
Interstate Drywall Corporation is this year's winner in the Healthcare Project category for their work at the Morristown Medical Center's Gagnon Cardiovascular Institute. The job entailed a 2-story vertical expansion on top of the Institute's existing building. This expansion added 72 private patient rooms and additional space for best-in-class cardiac imaging technology.
This job had some certain challenges. As we were working on an existing structure, we had to remove the existing MEPs that were on top of the roof and extend them up 2 floors, all while trying not to disrupt the existing patients and nurses that were on those floors.
MEPs, or mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, are the lifeblood of any building, but are especially critical in a hospital setting. Any problems with their functioning could significantly impact patient care, which would be unacceptable. Once the 2-story heavy gauge framework was in place, Interstate got to work erecting the interior and exterior light gauge framing. They then turned their attention to another phase of the build process.
In addition to the 2 patient room floors, we also did an extension of the existing pedestrian bridge. The pedestrian bridges are primarily curtain wall, so it lets in a lot of natural light and really accentuates some of the details that we did in those areas.
The abundance of light also means that every detail of the walkway needed to be spot on, as even the slightest imperfection would stick out like a sore thumb. Beyond a mere transportation corridor, the walkway provides wonderful views of the grounds. Both staff and patients alike can enjoy a sun-filled escape from ever-present hospital stresses. Interstate's attention then turned back to the interior of the 2-story expansion. They quickly divided the cavernous interior spaces up into patient rooms, nurses' stations, and hallways using light gauge framing. They soon followed with insulation and drywall. The nurses' stations all feature curved GRG soffits along with acoustical tile and wood panel ceilings. Circular frame gypsum soffits with unique lighting fixtures punctuate hallway intersections. Ceiling soffits over double patient rooms along with wood ceiling panels help to enliven what are typically monotonous hospital hallways, while extensive wall bumpers protect the walls against gurney collisions and act as sturdy handrails for patients if necessary. Inside patient rooms, Interstate was responsible for all the light gauge framing used to support medical devices within the walls. They were then tasked with installing all the drywall, wood protection at the head of patient beds, along with matching ceiling panels. Interstate constructed GRG columns in room corners, hung acoustical tile ceilings, and installed curved GRG soffits above counter and sink areas. They installed all the doors and hardware, including those leading into bathrooms, where curved GRG soffits mirror the curved shower bases. Then finally installed all the shower hardware.
Returning to the job has been great. I've gotten to see both the nurses and patients utilizing this space for what it was intended to do. And the job turned out great. Quality looks awesome.
This handsome building, located in Jersey City and known as New Jersey City University Block B, was a ground-up construction effort completed in September of 2019. Construction began in April of 2018 with the pouring of the foundation. 2 more levels were added on top of that. The second level would become the foundation for the residential units above, while the ground floor and first floor levels were left open for parking. In April of 2019, Interstate Drywall Corporation joined the project, and their work on the building has earned them this year's DISCA's Higher Education Project Award. Panelized framing was adopted for the project, which meant that every wood-framed wall and truss in the building came as a numbered panel. Each panel was then hoisted using a crane and installed in place. This process greatly improved the speed of the whole operation. Altogether, 4 floors were added to the building using this construction method. In total, the building has a gross square footage of 200,000 square feet, which includes 147,000 square feet of living space and 53,000 square feet of parking area. Panelized framing like this is relatively quick to install, extremely sturdy, and cost-effective.
Production went well. We really didn't have any delays so much, but it is something that on a day, as each truck comes in, you have to monitor, make sure that you get the right panels, the right places. Other than that, there were really no problems. The coordination between Delsano, Interstate, our panel supplier, I think, went as well as you can expect it to go.
Unlike the residential units above, the ground floor main entrance to the building was constructed using light gauge metal framing. In this area, Interstate hung the drywall on a ceiling grid 20 feet above the floor. The floor-to-ceiling windows and abundant natural light mandated that all finishes on all surfaces needed to be flawless, and they are, from the entryway to separate sitting areas and a small cafe as well. A common area above the entry space also features Interstate ceilings and drywall work. Long corridors erected during the panelized construction phase were sheathed and finished by Interstate crews. These corridors lead to the building's 144 apartments, as well as other lobbies, stairways, and common areas. All the apartments have walls and ceilings done by Interstate, and the finishes are absolutely beautiful. They even handled all the cabinet installation. All of the studio, 1- and 2-bedroom apartments are comfortable, spacious, and look incredible.
I think the products used were top shelf. When I look at the construction from top to bottom, there were no corners cut. I think the craftsmanship, the workmanship was all you would want it to be.
Interstate should be extremely proud of their extensive work at NJCU Building B and are certainly deserving of this award.
Welcome back. I just thought I'd take a second to tell you where exactly we are. We're sitting at Seminole Vineyards, which is in Alexander Valley in Sonoma County, which is about 60 miles straight north from San Francisco. We're on a 12.5-acre estate where we grow Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, and then on my fence lines, we grow our Bordeaux varieties, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Malbec, and Petit Verdot. And our next wine, the reason I'm talking about our vineyard is, the next wine is the 2013 Seminole Alexander Valley Fence Line Bordeaux blend. And I'm super proud of our wines, and this particular wine has become my new favorite. I used to think my 12 fence line was the best wine I ever made. And then as this wine developed in the bottle, it's become my favorite wine. So as we take a look at it, remember we were talking about again what a wine is or isn't when sommelier is asked to pick it. Notice you could barely see your fingers behind the Zinfandel. You can't see your fingers behind this Bordeaux variety. If you look at your tech sheet, the varieties in this wine are 51% Cabernet, 23% Petit Verdot, 17% Malbec, 8% Merlot, and 1% Cabernet Franc. And when I made this wine, I fermented it on its wild yeast. So when I took it into the winery, we pressed it off. Actually, we crushed it, threw it into the fermentation, and instead of adding yeast, which would be from a lab, we let the natural yeast that are in the vineyard and in the winery take over and do the fermentation. You get a little bit more complexity that way, and as long as the fermentation starts in the first couple of days, you're in good shape. And we were very well pleased at how this fermentation took, and it's a beautiful wine. And color is so deep; it's midnight purple. I mean, that is almost black. Let's go ahead and give it the super nose. Boy, there's a little bit of cassis there, a little bit of mocha, brown spice. Whew, a little bit of oak. Are you smelling that really on the side of your nose?
Good question, Tom.
Yes.
About the blend, actually. What combination? Oh, it just went away. What combination or combinations make a good versus a great blend?
Well, it just depends on what you're looking for, what the winemaker's looking for. In a Bordeaux blend, what I'm looking for is finesse, complexity, mouthfeel, and longevity. I like to age my wines. So what I'm looking for, the Petit Verdot gives me nice color. The Cabernet Franc gives me this almost violet character in the nose. Cabernet Sauvignon gives me body and tannin. The Merlot gives me that lush feel, almost a feminine character to a big masculine style wine. And then the Malbec is almost like Merlot. If you're looking at a Malbec vine growing right next to a Merlot vine, you're going to have a hard time wondering which one is which, because they're big berries and they're lush, and they have this plum character to them. Cabernet Sauvignon, on the other hand, tiny little berries. The skin to juice ratio in a Cabernet berry is tiny, because you get, I don't know how many of you have bitten into a varietal, a Vitis vinifera varietal like Cabernet or Merlot. A Merlot berry is like 3 times the size of a Cabernet Sauvignon, and that's why when you squeeze and ferment and macerate your Cabernet, you're going to get a much bigger wine with more tannin, and as opposed to the next fermentation tank that might have Merlot in it, and you even macerate that, leave it on the skins a long time, you're going to still get a plush, round wine as opposed to Cabernet Sauvignon. So what I'm looking for when I'm making my Bordeaux blends is that full flavor. And I've experimented using Syrah with my blends. I've experimented using Zinfandel in my Cabernet blends. They just don't seem to work. When I'm making Zinfandel, I might blend a little Carignan or Petit Syrah in there, but I'd never do that with my Cabernets and my Bordeaux blends. I just feel, I guess I'm true to my French heritage, and the French would say they don't ever want to blend other than the 5 Bordeaux red varieties, Cabernet, Merlot, Malbec, Petit Verdot, and Cabernet Franc, and that's what I do when I blend. Now, what changes every year is the amount of those Bordeaux varieties. When I'm making my blends, I'll take all of my barrels, and say I'm making 8 barrels of wine. Some of those barrels have more Merlot in them, and some of them have Cabernet Franc, some of them have Petit Verdot, some of them have Cabernet Sauvignon. I'll lay out all my barrels on the winery floor, and I'll go through with my enologist, and I'll taste the wines and I'll go, okay, this one is strong, full flavored. Remember we were talking about French barrels, how there were different coopers that make the barrels with different toasts. I always use a medium plus toast. I toast the heads, and each barrel has its own flavor. So it's almost like a little spice of this. I'll use Taranceau. My favorite barrel is Sylvain. Fouquet is another barrel I like to use. Berger occasionally. So I've got all these barrels laid out, and when I'm making the fence line blend as opposed to my Cabernet, I'll go, okay, we're going to use a third of this barrel on the fence line. We're going to use 10% of this barrel, and what we do is in a beaker, we'll make in milliliters. We'll make the blend and then pour it in a glass, swirl it and smell. Oh no, too much Petit Verdot in it. So we're going to lighten up the Petit Verdot, more Merlot in this one, and then I'll go through all my barrels, and I'm making the final blend that will end up taking the wine out of the barrels before we bottle, and leave it for maybe 4 or 5 months in tank to kind of marry and be ready for bottling, so that when the wine gets bottled, it's had a little bit of time to kind of get used to its brothers and sisters, so to speak. So this is the 13, and again the nose was a little bit of that mocha there too. Let's go ahead and put it in our mouth. That chocolate. God, did you hear that? You know, when I sip this wine for the first time during the day, I can almost hear the angels sing. It's like, oh my God, it's such a beautiful wine. I hope you're thinking the same thing. This one is I'll tell you, it's a 13, so it's 8 years old, and it's really just starting to show its own. That Petit Verdot in there, giving its color, and the Cabernet Sauvignon, giving it longevity. This wine will last probably another 10 years. But it took a while for it to come around. I was telling you that I thought my 12 fence line was the best wine I ever made. And because I wasn't sure what was going to happen with this 13, because it was kind of all elbows and ankles for a while. It wasn't doing it for me. And then all of a sudden, in the last 6 or 8 months, it's really come around, and it's maturing, and it's getting more complexity. Again, you know what? I'm using French oak, right? And it's about, I don't know, about a third new, and it's not over oaked. I mean, you smell that. I'm smelling fruit. That's what I want. I'm out there in my vineyard constantly, especially as we get close to harvest. And the last thing I want to do is ruin that fruit with too much oak. And one thing that I find with a lot of high-end wines is people over oak them because they think the customer is looking, if they're going, this wine is $50 a bottle. So if you're paying $50 a bottle, some winemakers think that the customer wants oak. Personally, I don't want oak. That's fine. Oak is fine if that's what you guys know about oak. When you're cutting, your lumber and everything for the construction sites, I want my wine to have a finesse, a character, and I really feel this has that. Let's put it in my mouth again here. The different fruit flavors. There's cherry, classic Alexander Valley, California style, dark cherry. There's a little bit of blueberry there. Feel the tannin, soft tannin. It's softer tannin than the Zin. You got a question?
We have a tannin question, actually.
Okay.
Why do tannins make you stuffy or sneeze?
The histamines. There are histamines in the tannins, and if you're finding that you're having a problem with congestion when you're drinking red wines, take an antihistamine and see if that helps, because and it may be something as you get older, all of a sudden you're noticing that, geez, I never had this before. Now I'm getting all stuffed up. It's the histamines in the tannin in the wine. And if you wanted to alleviate that problem, then you might want to go to a lighter style red. But most red wines are fermented, on the skins, and you're going to have those histamines in there. But there could be certain ones where the winemaker leaves the wines what's called extended maceration. When a wine is said to be macerating, it's in combination with the juice, the skins, the seeds, the pips, all in the fermenter. And a winemaker might close the fermenter, add gas, and leave it macerating, called it's extended maceration, for a week, 2 weeks. I used to talk to the Ed Spraja, the winemaker at Behringer, and he said, Tom, I don't know why you don't macerate. He said, I'm trying to get everything, all the flavor and all the tannins that I can out of my grapes. I'm paying so much for these grapes. And I say to myself, great, you end up with an over-tannic wine for me. So it just depends what you're looking for. So if you can get to the tasting notes or call the winery and talk to the winemaker, winemakers love to talk to folks, especially this time of year when there's not that much going on in the vineyards. Call them up and say, hey, I'm finding that I'm getting too much, I'm getting plugged up when I'm having your Cabernet Sauvignon or whichever wine it is, and ask them, is that extended maceration? Is there another wine you make that's macerated less? Because that's probably your problem. So again, getting back to the Seminole fence line. This one we did with the steak roll-ups, right? Oh yeah. Did anybody do the steak roll-ups out there? Any hands waving?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So you know how good those are. I'll tell you, for those of you who haven't, sometime when you've got some time and it's not really the time to be barbecuing, I guess, back east, but on one of those nice days, barbecue that flank steak and then do that flank steak roll-up. It is perfect, especially with this particular wine. God, I can't tell you how much I like this. Just to give you an idea of where we came up with the name Fence Line, it's just that we have our southern fence line and our western fence line. On my western fence line, I have what I call my Merlot West, and on my southern fence line, I have the Gustave Nibon clone 29, which adds a really distinct character. It's an heirloom clone, doesn't produce a lot of tonnage, but I throw it into my fence line every year. And that combination, it makes a very unique wine. And when we get to the next wine, we'll talk about the difference between a blend and 100% varietal, because the next one, when we get to it, is 100% Cabernet. So we'll have the non-blended wine versus the blended wine here. And it's a really quite a different flavor. Of course, the vintages are different, so that's going to have an effect, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. So this one is $50 a bottle. I don't make a lot of wine. How many did I make? Did I write that down in there? No, I didn't on this one. But I bet I've made 110 cases, something like that. So it doesn't go around a whole lot. But we released it about 3 months ago, so probably have another couple months supply. We like?
Another question.
Okay.
Do you think that the Malbec influences the smoothness of the wine?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Remember, I was telling you, it's very similar to Merlot. It gives you that plush, round, rich character. Almost, Concord grapes, when you first bite into it, you get that sweetness. When you're tasting those Malbec grapes on the vine, when you're getting to 24 degrees Brix, 25 degrees Brix is where we pick. To talk about Brix a little bit, if you're buying like Thompson seedless grapes or something in the supermarket, those would be anywhere from 16 to 18 degrees Brix, and degrees Brix is a measure of sweetness. And it takes about 2 weeks it takes a week to gain 2 Brix. So if you're thinking about picking your Cabernets and all your Bordeaux varieties, you're picking between 24.5 to say 26 degrees Brix, and that is a really sweet berry when you bite into it. So the Malbec, because it's so big, and the grape variety berry is so big, it tastes like almost like a wine when you're biting into the fruit that's hanging on the vine. So yes, that's exactly what it is. Any other questions? So we like, I'm hoping. It's certainly one of my favorites. So now that you've tasted the Seminole Vineyards fence line, let's watch the last video of the 2020 project winners.
To say the construction of the American Dream Complex in East Rutherford has been a long haul would be a significant understatement, but it's finally done and open for business. This year's Hospitality Entertainment Project Award goes to BJ McGlone for their contribution to this massive effort. Although their work can be found throughout the complex, there are a number of areas where it's particularly impressive, and the elliptical ceiling above Building C's Main Street is most assuredly one of them.
We started out with erecting a major scaffold, which consisted of a 3-story scaffold system. Then we utilized the Hilti layout system to mark out all our points in our elliptical ceiling. After we had all our layout complete, we then custom bent every piece of track to a specific location. With that ceiling, every panel is specific to its location, so layout was very important.
If the ceiling's elliptical shape was not a big enough challenge, incorporating hundreds of hexagonal GRG panels most certainly was. Each multi-hexagonal panel weighs 80 pounds and needed to be fit into place like a giant jigsaw puzzle, then hung from above by aircraft cable. Diamond-shaped GRG panels were also installed on a number of the area's vertical surfaces by McGlone craftsmen, and once again, layout was absolutely critical. The finished product is just spectacular, bordering on visually overwhelming, and every inch of it was installed and finished to perfection. The closer you look, the more precise the installation appears, from the mechanicals that follow the elliptical shapes within reveals to knife-edge perimeters on drywall soffits. Then consider that the majority of the work was performed 3 stories above the main floor. Impressive. Watching visitors enter the area and instantly look up with mouths agape lets you know that it was a job done right. On a smaller scale, BJ McGlone was responsible for other unique ceilings throughout the complex.
So one of the ceilings that we installed was the diamond lattice ceiling system, suspended from above using unistrut, threaded rod, custom made just for this project from Massey ceiling systems. We utilized the Hilti, the PLT 300, which gave you each suspension point individually, so it made it very easy for us to pinpoint the locations, being that everything's on such a hard angle.
Fully assembled, the diamond lattice structures give the impression of snowflakes suspended from the ceiling, rather appropriate for a facility that, among countless other attractions, includes an indoor ski slope. Diamond pattern GRG ceilings in hallways extending off Main Street were also done by McGlone. Here again, the shape of these suspended ceilings was anything but square and incorporated a number of design elements. Just one misaligned panel would have thrown the entire structure out of whack.
In the food court area on C3, we installed a closed cell GRG ceiling system, suspended off of Rigidex ceiling, wires installed every 2 feet, and fastened directly to fire-rated 3/4 plywood. Looks really good. It looks beautiful when you walk by. It's something to be proud of.
I think BJ McGlone's portion of American Dream came out fantastic. I think it's something that we all can be proud of as a team. I think it was a great collaborative effort of every employee that we have and have had on site, and it's just nice to be able to walk through with your family and see what you've done.
Well, now that my wife has seen that video, she just flashed me over here and said that she's going to want to contact you because she'd love to have an indoor ski slope here at the ranch. It's hard to us to drive up to the mountains all the way from over here. So maybe I'll give you a call a little later. Indoor ski slope, that would be kind of cool at a winery. Anyway, just kidding. All right, our next wine and our final wine is the Seminole Vineyards 2016 Alexander Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. So this is my, actually, it's the first 100% Cabernet Sauvignon that I've made going back to 2004. Prior to that, I've always done a little bit of blending with my French, my French varietals on the fence line. A little bit of Merlot here, maybe Petit Verdot there. It might only have been 6-8%, that type of thing. But this particular wine in 2016, remember I was telling you I'd lay out my barrels? Well, I laid out my barrels, and when I was tasting through the Cabernet in several of the barrels, I'm going like, wow. It jumped out on me. And I thought to myself, what do I need to do to make this wine even better? And I just decided there was nothing else I needed. So it's 100% Cabernet. It's wild yeast fermented again. It's all French oak aged. And I think it's terrific. We made a small amount. It's $75 a bottle. So it's a little more expensive than the fence line. And it's a 16 vintage. So it's 3 years younger than that 13. So let's go ahead and give it the super nose. There's that wild cherry again from Alexander Valley. Dark cherry. Toastiness, just a little bit of mocha. Dark berry. Guys, that cherry is so dominant. It really grabs me. And the color, look at that color. Remember we said the last one was midnight purple? Look at this beauty. That is, God, that's sky black, nighttime, midnight purple. Let's take a taste. Again, you know what? When that's in your mouth, does that feel complete? There's no rough edges. There's no elbows and ankles. It's a 16. This wine is going to get so much better in the bottle. It's just going from youth to maturity right now. It's got, the problem is I'll be sold out of it before it finally, I'll keep some for myself, but this is, put that in my mouth again. I don't taste these often enough. It's a great excuse to do these tastings. That mocha, coffee. I'm getting the good acidity around the edges. Soft, juicy. That's got the juiciness, almost like the Zinfandel had. I'm getting a little bit, I'm almost getting blueberry. Try that again. What are you guys getting? Are you getting some of that? Some of that dark cherry? There's that mocha again, that coffee. That comes up on the top of the palate. A little bit of that dry tannin.
Really good.
Really, really good. I like to hear that.
You're getting a lot of great comments about it.
Wow, that man, you know what? I've been falling in love with my 13 fence line I was saying. I'm gonna have to revisit this a little bit more often. We're having tenderloin steaks tomorrow.
There's a question that came in.
I'm a huge white fan, and this might be my favorite wine of the night.
Wow. Wow, very cool. Very cool. You know, I'll tell you, it's funny. Sometimes I lean to one wine for a while, and then I fall in love with another one, and then I kind of give up on this one, and then I fall in love with this one for a while and hit it and pull it out of the cellar, and then all of a sudden, boom, I fall back in love with this one. It's a great thing to be the winemaker because you got it in your cellar. But I am really pleasantly impressed. And how many of you made the shortbread cookies on this? Because if you put the shortbread cookie, take a sip of the wine, put the shortbread cookie, swallow it, put the shortbread cookie in your mouth, and just let it sit there for a little bit, and then kind of run your tongue around it, and then it almost evaporates, explodes, and then you take a sip of this wine. That is a match made in heaven. That is perfect.
There's a question, Tom.
Okay.
How can you guarantee a wine's going to be good from a certain year, and how do you know to make enough?
I'm tasting the grapes all the time. So I'm in the vineyard. We're monitoring what's going on in the vineyard, monitoring the amount of fruit that we leave on the vine. We're keeping track of the temperature, how much water we're using, how long the growing season is, were there too many heat waves, do I have any raisoning going on? You know, the nice thing about owning a vineyard, we have 5 acres of Cabernet, right? We grow about 25, 28 tons every year. We keep 3 tons. That's it. I've got my 3 favorite spots. So I've got my vines that were planted in 1995, clone 7 on 4453 rootstock. Then at that end of the vineyard, I've got my clone 337, small area, with that's on 10114 rootstock, which I'll never use again. Anyway, a long story there. And then I've got my clone 15 on the western end, and that's on 3309, which is a great rootstock. If you're ever going to plant a vineyard, that's one to use. Anyway, so I take those 3 spots and I make my Cabernet every year, and we sell off the rest. So I've got what I consider to be my very, very favorite spots, making my very, very special wine. And one year, 2019, and we're going to bottle it. I don't think we talked about this yet, but 2019, so it wasn't the last harvest, it was the one before. We were waiting for the winery, which we sell to come in and pick. And I knew my grapes were ready. So I said to Brenda, my beautiful wife, I said, you know what? Let's just go out and we'll pick a ton. You know, we'll just pick a ton, and it won't take us long, maybe 6-8 hours, and we'll just cherry pick it. All the little favorite spots, and only the best berries and clusters in those favorite spots. Well, 8 hours later, Brenda was ready to kill me, and we only picked a half ton. So I made one barrel of this 19, and I think I'm going to bottle it this summer. I don't know. It's crazy to bottle 25 cases, but I just might. It's tasting so good right now, and we may call it something special. I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, sometimes there are special spots. The vintage, you know, you keep track of everything. And literally, Brenda and I are in the vineyard all summer long. And by the time harvest is over, we don't go out in the vineyard for about a month. We just have had enough. So if you're a grape grower, you know grape growers, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, this 16, wow. Do we like?
Yeah, you got a lot of nice comments.
All right.
One question just came in.
Okay.
Well, a comment and a question. I prefer every wine chilled. Is that wrong?
You're after my heart. If you open my refrigerator right now, every one of my wines are in the refrigerator. I leave all my wines, red, white, sparkling, rosés, they're in the fridge. When I'm ready to taste them, I might pour myself a glass, and if I find it to be a little too cold, I just warm it up. That's what your hands are for, the bulb. When I teach wine classes, I over chill the whites specifically because I don't want them to be warm when people taste them. A lot of, you know, I know the sommeliers will say, well, you know, if you taste the wines, the Chardonnays are warm, they give you more aromatics. How do you drink your wine? You're drinking your wine when it's cold, right? I mean, why would you try to buy wine at a tasting room and the gentleman tells you, or the lady says, you should drink your wine warm? Sorry, you got anything cold? You know, I want my wines chilled. I think red wines, 55 degrees, I like them at 50. White wines, 45 degrees, I like them at 40. Sparkling wine, people say 45. I almost like them frozen. And if it's a little numb, it'll warm up. You can't get a wine colder without dropping an ice cube in it. But if it starts cold, you certainly can get it warmer just by letting it warm up. So I'm right there with you, guaranteed. Don't let anybody change you. Any other questions there?
No.
Do we want to open this up to, and are you gonna take people off mute? Any comments on criticism, praise?
This was so much fun. Thank you.
All right, you're very welcome, Mike. We had
Thank
a
you for
great time
sharing
doing
your
this.
knowledge. I appreciate it.
So, again,
job. Great
yeah.
wine.
Thank you.
Terrific. Well, thank you. I'm very happy that we were
Great
able to enjoy this 2 hours.
Very informative. Thank you.
Tom, it was fantastic. You are the wine guy.
That's what they call me.
Congratulations, Father Andre.
Are we all set then?
You froze, Clint.
Excuse me?
Not sure what they're doing.
I guess we're gonna wind this up. Thank you very much for having us. Congratulations to all the winners. I can't believe some of the things you guys build. And don't forget, we're gonna need the phone number of that indoor ski slope. Thanks very much.
And
What
where
about
exactly
wines?
located? You're in Napa Valley, or where
No,
in California are you?
We're in Sonoma County. We're looking directly at Mount St. Helena, which is right there in St. Helena in Napa Valley. So we're about 45 minutes from the town of St. Helena, right outside the town of Healdsburg. So if any of you guys are coming to California, on the back of our label there, my email address, we're gonna put up my phone number. If you've got any questions or you're coming out with friends, give me a call. We'll bring you sneakers. We'll kick some dirt. I'll show you these favorite spots of mine when you get out here.
We love that. You were so informative. Thank you. This is so fun. Thank you to DISCA for putting on this event tonight. It was fantastic.
Thanks for coming.
So we'll wish you well from Alexander Valley, and stay safe.
Stay well. Stay safe.
Sarah, you still there?
Great job. Thank you.